Ford got this one right too. I'm pretty sure there's no speakers involved in the sound of this vehicle, but the sound of this vehicle, even though you go from the flat plane crank back to the cross plane crank, you do get the heads from the 350. And so everyone was talking about the crank when the 350 came out because it makes the sound so much different.
Yeah.
But the real amazing thing, the real thing that helped it rev as high as it did was the heads. And so when you run a supercharger, you can't rev the blower that high, but so the red line is lower. And so when you lower the red line, you lose the benefits of that flat plane crank. So you go back to the cross plane crank for other reasons. But it still spins to 7,500. I mean, with the blower on it.
And that's a ton.
And so and you've got this dual clutch, which is crazy. I mean, so to get in a Mustang and spin the knob, and press M, and have all of that power, and not just all the power, because Hellcats and Camaro ZL1 1LEs have the power. With the Mustang, it's different. With the Mustang, you've got a dual overhead cam engine. It's revier. You've got a little more of that precision. But I talk a lot about in videos about like Mustang horsepower versus like Porsche horsepower. Like Porsche has like less drivetrain loss, so feel like it makes better use of 450 horsepower or whatever. So if you line up a 450 horsepower Porsche and a 450 horsepower Mustang, the Porsche is going to house that thing. This is, I mean, it's still high 3,000 pound type car, but this feels like less drivetrain loss than I've ever. I mean, this thing.
Wow.
This thing is like, it is. It's really rocking. I mean, obviously the lack of a manual is disappointing, but like, I don't think I'd prefer a manual to this gearbox. I mean, I like the 350 with a manual. That's really well matched. This is like almost too fast.
Well, the GT2 RS doesn't have a manual anymore, right? Like that's the company we're in right now.
Yeah.
Which this revs to 7,500. How many other cars, period, rev above that on sale today? Is it like
not a lot
cars?
For this amount of money.
I mean, even in general, like that's really high.
Yeah, and so it's 760 horsepower and 625 torque.
Jesus.
And it's you bang off shifts, crazy fast.
This is supposed to be really fast.
This Tremec gearbox, for years the argument against dual clutches is they can't hold the power. They can't hold the power, right? That's why all these fast Jaguars and all this other stuff and all these other supercharged V8s have been using automatics, right? It's because, they can't hold the power. Well, here's a dual clutch that holds more power and torque than the PDK in the GT2 RS.
Wow.
And, I mean, I didn't drive very much with it in automatic, like, fast, so I don't necessarily know about its like predictive shifting and stuff like that. It's fine as an auto, but like in the city or whatever, as a manual, it's rad. I mean, it's really, 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 really responsive. If the revs exist between where you are and the red line, you will get the gear.
Wow.
Even if there's one extra at the top, you'll get the gear.
Wow.
It's very fast up and down. I've doubted kind of for a long time the ability. I also thought when they weren't using dual clutches in these muscle cars that the engines couldn't rev fast enough to keep up with that. This engine can. I mean, this is really something pretty different. And I went with Segura, and we switched with his. So, obviously his $150,000 E63 with the carbon pack and the bucket seats. So, it feels more expensive to the touch. Mm-hmm. But if you put a passenger in either car, blindfolded them, this thing is the Shelby is way more like an AMG than it is like a Mustang GT.
Wow.
I mean, the gearbox completely changes the game because now we're at the kind of sensations, because it's not just power, it's power with you know,
precision.
Power
Yeah.
associated with the kind of precision that I really associate with much more expensive metal.
Well, because AMGs are like, they are the it's where muscle cars meet Porsche to me, right? And so now you have that, only it's just coming from Ford.
Yeah, I mean, if you know, the stuff you touch is still Mustang, right? It's still, you know, the seats were
Sorry, driving
fantastic.
experience,
Yeah,
though, yeah.
driving experience. So, and you know, there wasn't, you know, the thing about the Mustang, all of the Mustangs are, if you look at a car like the Cayman GT4 or the BMW M2 or let's just use those examples.
Ford Windstar.
Ford Windstar. It feels like you took a chassis and a powertrain and an interior, and then you kind of sucked the body around it as tight as it'll go. It's very taut. So taut that like the wheels bulge out. You know what I mean?
Right. Short overhangs, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Mustangs feel like you took that M2 and shoved a pump in it and went thump, 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 and filled it full of air. It feels like in between the wheels and all this stuff, there's air, and it could be tighter around it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's where the Mustanginess comes from, right? Seats, Recaro, fantastic. Steering wheel, you know, going back to back with an AMG, the steering wheel's basically the same. They use this suede covered, you know, aluminum, all this stuff. Like, that's nice, you know. And it's a Mustang, so it's totally functional, daily driver, like smooth. It rides nice, you know, adjustable suspension.
Doesn't ride too stiff. Like,
Nah, actually, it's good. It was fine. Normal mode, fine. Yeah, no. I mean, it's firm, given the performance, but it's not horrible, not abusive. The only thing, mine didn't have the carbon fiber wheels. That's optional.
Okay.
18 Gs. Having driven the 350R, it makes a big difference. It's so much unsprung weight, so much rotational weight. I might have to beg Jason for down the road to try one with the carbon wheels just to see. But even without it, bro,
wow.
mobbing. So I mean, you're going so fast. I think I wrote on Instagram. It's not just speeding. It's for like really obscene speeding.
I mean, because this is supercar performance. Like, that's real. It really,
fast.
really is.
It's so fast.
Now, how did this feel compared
There's
to?
no way this thing doesn't do 200 miles an hour. There's no fucking way this thing won't go.
Well, no,
200.
because if the old GT500 with 100 horsepower less
that
did.
weirdo one that like it's in some downwind, you know,
Right,
downhill.
but it was still
yeah.
close, and it
Yeah.
was 100 horsepower down. This or ZR1, how do those feel?
Well, the ZR1, what's amazing about it is when you're just kind of chilling up to 5, 6, 7 tenths, it feels pretty normal and fine and good, right? You get it with a stick and it's cool, and it's a Corvette. It just goes like pretty fast, right? When you really start to go and you're like threshold braking and, man, you know, really going fast, it's a lot to be driving with one hand. You know, you really, when you're going that fast, like, I realize there's some people that are either so skilled or so macho that they're going, Matt, you fucking bitch. But like, this is how I see it. I can't keep up with one hand on the wheel with a 750 horsepower car. So I think Ford's product positioning here is good. Like, oh, you said this versus ZR1?
Do you feel like one is more usable around town? Which one
The
feels more
ZR1
motorsporty?
is just as much a regular Corvette as this is a regular Mustang when you need it to be.
Cool.
Equivalent product positioning. This is easier to deal with a little bit.
Well, it's got a bigger greenhouse, right?
The ZR1's hood takes up like half the windshield.
Because the
this
roof
has
is
a pretty
low.
big bulge too. But the ZR1 is like, you're literally blocking, like, they block a comical. You look at cars that did that kind of shit in the 70s, you go, they'll never do that again.
Yeah, it's Ram hair. Yeah, totally, dude.
But no, I mean, this was, in all the ways you needed it to be a regular Mustang, it's a regular Mustang. And then in all the ways you want it to be obnoxiously fast and loud, it's obnoxiously fast and loud. It's very, very fun to drive. I mean, I have no qualms with this thing dynamically. I mean, it's as good as this platform could possibly be.
Wow.
You know, I mean, there's a couple little nitpicks in the video, but like fundamentally, this thing is just, It's just bananas. It's so crazy.
Does it feel basically, blindfold on like the GT350, but with more power, or have they changed other things about it?
Yeah. No, it's definitely it feels every bit as manageable and predictable and drivable as the 350, but it's so much power. I think their product positioning is good. It's like the GT2 or maybe like the Turbo S or something like that. Whereas your 350 is your 911 GT3, and those cars are really well paired for the gearboxes they come with. There's people that'll be bitchy about this thing not having a manual. I doubt most of them have any intention of really driving it fast.
Yeah.
And if you went out and tried to drive it really fast, I think you'd have a hard time. I mean, to a point, it would be fine.
This is
to a point. It's
300
fine.
more horsepower than IMSA cars have. Like this is people. I know there are people that have. Let's see. No one has sold, or not very often, a car that makes this much power with a manual transmission in the history of time. The cars that have made this much power,
Zonda R.
Yeah, and been this fast are race cars. This is
true.
Can-Am shit. Like that's what we're talking about.
Production manual cars pretty much stopped in the high fives.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean, it would be. What was I watching? I was watching Shift Talkers at Glucker's show on Motor Trend, and someone asked like, what's the best car for burnouts? And someone said, Hellcat, and then I think, was it you maybe? You were like, it should be a manual transmission instead. It's like at a certain point when there's so much power, it doesn't really matter. But the only reason that you could possibly want this car with a manual is like if you are either a former Can-Am driver, and then hats off to you, or you want to be able to. That's not good.
Oh, our GoPro just died?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Or you want to be able to do clutch drops, which you won't need because it has 750 horsepower anyway.
But it's plugged in. WTF. So it's okay. All is better with the kitten. So anyway, the GT500 is pretty freaking extraordinary, and I think I don't want to. I think it might win the muscle car war for the time being. ZL1 1LE, very impressive. On track, amazing. Beat it on it hard all day at VIR. The way Lee drove it was very impressive. But then when I got on the road, it just beat me up so badly. Those race shocks, it tram-lined, it bounced.
It didn't have mag ride, right?
It did not. It uses those crazy multi-matic shocks.
Oh, right, because if you want the mag ride on the ZL1,
shocks.
you have to get...
the regular ZL1. Yeah, the 1LE. So this had a better ride. This was easier to use. This didn't dart around, whereas that did. And Hellcats,
This will smoke a Hellcat on the road.
It'll smoke a Hellcat. Hellcats are hilarious.
Yeah.
They're great for what they are. They look cool. The wide body is an improvement.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they are really stretching the legs of a very old platform.
Yes.
The Corvette, same thing. The dual clutch gearbox really changes the game on how that car feels in terms of how exotic it feels.
But it's always been in a slightly different camp.
Right.
It's almost like the pony cars are moving into territory that was previously owned by Corvette, and Corvette is moving into territory that was owned by exotics.
Yeah, there you go. And I think this gearbox changes it to beyond normal Mustang stuff in the way that the flat plane crank in the other car makes that feel like more of an exotic engine than just a regular Mustang engine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounded like Ripley was detecting aliens.
Yeah, I don't know. There's we're at the beach. There's gonna be some weirdness going by.